Good afternoon. It is Tuesday, September 27th, 2022. One of the issues in teaching the Bible in a verse-by-verse basis is that you run into some passages that are a little more difficult to understand, and you just kind of wish you could bleep through it. Today's passage is one of those. The Apostle Paul is answering the question, how can I be right with God? There's a controversy in the Galatian churches about what was required to be right with God. There are those that said you're right with God when you live right, when you do the right things, and only if you can do the right things will you be right with God. And there are others who said, no, righteousness from God comes through faith, and it makes a difference in what you believe and what you are rather than what you do. And the Apostle Paul is trying to answer that question today in Galatians chapter 2, verses 17 to 21, and I'm reading from the New Living Translation, second edition. But suppose we seek to be made right with God through faith in Christ, and then we're found guilty because we have abandoned the law. Would that mean Christ has led us into sin? Absolutely not. Rather, I am a sinner if I rebuild the old system of law I already tore down. For when I tried to keep the law, it condemned me. So I died to the law. I stopped trying to meet all its requirements so that I might live for God. My old self has been crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. So I live in this earthly body by trusting in the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me. I do not treat the grace of God as meaningless, for if keeping the law could have made us right with God, then there's no need for Christ to die. You see, the first part of Paul's life, he tried very, very hard to follow the law and to keep the law. And he recognized that that only led to death. Literally, in the case of the Apostle Stephen, it led to him helping them kill Stephen. But others, and in his own life, Paul recognized that he couldn't keep the law. That every time he tried to keep the law, that he failed somewhere. And the law itself condemned him. Every time there's a rule, he recognized the rule was a boundary, and he had trouble staying within the boundaries. He says, so I crucified my old self with Christ. And that's one of Paul's great themes throughout his writings, is that our old way of life has been crucified with Christ. He put it to death with Christ because he's been risen to walk in a new life with him. He says, now I live by salvation because Christ lives within me, and I trust in every action I take that Christ is within me. And it's not as important what I do as it is who I am. And even more importantly, who is in me. I live by trust in God. He says, this life I live in the flesh, these old arthritic bones, these creaking joints, this life I live in the flesh, I live by trust in God. I'm being right with God because God lives within me. Our salvation experience does so much more than just merely provide us a pie-in-the-sky place in heaven. It means that all creative, all powerful, ever-living God comes and dwells within us and gives us new life from within. And we serve him with joy and gladness because we are living this life together. May you truly recognize the joy of your salvation this week as you're released from the hold and chains of an old way of life and released to live in a new way of life with Christ. God bless you.